working for you. This is the 23 News Update at 10.
Extending the Milwaukee District West Line west of Rockford. One state line community hopes to expand a transportation project coming in 2027, but needs the approval of the Winnebago County Board to do it.
23 News reporter Jake Pearson talks to area advocates about an extension of Metra's passenger rail service, creating one more stop in Freeport.
One Winnebago County Board member tells me in order to consider building a train station in Freeport, a feasibility study would be conducted on the nearest station, Harvard, which was built 30 years ago.
We are experiencing west of Rockford a transportation desert.
2027 could be a year of riding the rails in the state line as Metra passenger services return. Now, another state line city wants to be included.
The unanswered question is, what's it going to cost? Are grant funds available? Is it within financial reach?
In July, Governor J.B. Pritzker announced plans to restore passenger rail service from Chicago to Rockford on the Milwaukee District West Line. The plans include a stop in Belvedere and Rockford, but one Freeport resident asks the Winnebago County Board to consider extending the rails, one more stop to the Pretzel City.
We have people who have to drive to Quad Cities to take a plane to get to O'Hare, drive to Cedar Rapids to take a plane to get to O'Hare. We are hemorrhaging. We have Illinois people spending a lot of money in Iowa and Wisconsin. We want to stop that.
In order to make that a reality, the county would need a feasibility study, which would determine public interest in everyday ridership estimations. County Board member Jean Crosby says she would like to see Freeport compared to the newest train stop in the state line, which was built 30 years ago.
The growth patterns that occurred when Harvard became a stop, they were a very small farm community at the time, and it's really worked out well.
Stevenson County has already approved the idea of adding a train stop in Freeport, but needs approval from Winnebago County, as the current plans have Rockford as the last stop.
Thank you, Jake. And from 2007 to 2014, feasibility studies were performed on public interest for the Chicago to Rockford line. Depending on Freeport studies, it could be more than a decade before a Freeport rail stop is announced.